Hi, I'm Jim Vander Schaaf and welcome to my shop. Before I show you the video, I just want to ask you if you would please subscribe and ring the bell. Then you'll be notified of videos that follow, and I can do more of these, and I'll be encouraged to do more of these. And please provide me your feedback, because that's very important to me. I love to get comments and I respond to every one of them. So thanks. And cutting miters at a 45-degree angle. There are at least two essential aspects of getting accurate miters. And the first one is the right length. And so these are two different boards with different lengths, and you can see that the lengths of the boards are identical and the cuts are they're equal, but are they at exactly 45? Well, we won't know that until you see them put together. This has a little edge on the board here, but the flatness of the two miters, you can see with my fingers on them, I can't sense the difference. And this one, no, this is so close that I can't sense the difference either. So if the 45s are accurate, and that's this cut, then these boards should go together, whether you're making a picture frame, whether you're making a mirror, a border for a mirror, or something like that. And so we're going to try and see whether or not they're accurate. They jump around a little bit when I move them, but anyway, there's the results. And there, that's good all the way around. Now, if I measure them, which I can do, this is a digital measuring device, so I can set it at 90 degrees. Set it very carefully at 90 degrees. It takes a while to get that last degree setting. Anyway, lock that in place and then check whether these are accurate. And that's exactly 90 degrees. Well, this is off by 1/100th of a degree, but we're at 1/10 of a degree, but that's just my adjustment mechanism. So they're accurate all the way. If I look again and I set this at 45, there's 45. So I can check any one of these and I'll see, you can see exactly that's exactly 45 degrees. It doesn't matter which one I choose. They're all the same because they're cut the same way. So that's what you need to achieve. You need to have them same length and cut at 45. Now, the other thing that's crucial, of course, is you want to have these boards have parallel sides, both sides like this. And this is just some rough pine that I put together, but I'm going to demonstrate doing that for pieces of uncut boards. So we have those right here, and we're going to cut them with this jig. All right. So first thing, get the blade up to the right height, a little bit above where it's cutting through all the way. And then if you focus over on this side, you'll see that I've got two little cuts through this board. And if you look at what that does, that goes right through the blade when it's cut at 45. So I can use that to determine where the cut is going to be made. And I'll just position it like that. Then we'll turn the saw on, turn the vacuum on, and put hearing protection on, and like that. Okay, so now we've cut one side of each of these pieces, and the whole idea now is to use this stop and cut the other sides. So, normally what I would do is I would measure those boards to suit whatever I had to fit, and I would make a mark, and let's say that I wanted that to be exactly, let's say 9 inches. So I make that mark, and then I'd do those at 9. Let's say this one, I want to do the same. I'll do this one at 12 inches. Okay, so right there, and then mark those exactly. Always put your pencil on the line and write down, and you get an exact mark. So that's that, and now I'm going to show you how I do this. I've got all these blocks that were cut off, and if this is how I move my stop back and forth. If I want to cut right at that angle, I put it right there. But now I have to move this block against here, and it has a sharp little point there, and it may move around a little bit, the piece of wood. So I've come up with a scheme to deal with that, and that is take a cutoff block, put it exactly at the edge, and take a small piece of tape and just tape it in place. Now you got a flat surface against which we can push it against the stop and get it exactly the way we want it. So we'll put it in there. I'll move it up against here. That's going to be the cutoff point. Move my stop over, position it in place, and lock it in place. Now, it needs to be adjusted just a little bit. There. Okay, so that's locked in place. And that's for the short piece, so I can do one short piece and then do the other short piece. So let's cut them. All right, so now let's see how we did. Now we're going to test them the same way we tested them before. 2 long pieces, 2 short pieces, put them together, see what we got. And look at that. Look at that. Look at those corners. They are, this one is a hair off in length, but when I put them together, they're perfect. They're perfect cuts all the way through. So obviously we can repeat this over and over, and that's what I want to show you how I arrived at this point, because like I said, there's a secret to doing this, and there are several aspects to doing it that I want to demonstrate to you. So we'll put these aside, and now we'll talk about a miter gauge. And the miter gauge that came with this saw was totally inadequate. And I think that's what most table saw manufacturers provide you, because they don't put the money into making an accurate one. They realize that if you're going to need that level of accuracy, you're probably going to seek another solution. So I threw away that miter gauge. What was it? It was short. It was only this long. The bar wasn't nearly this long. It had, it was short in this dimension, and it was short in this dimension, and it just simply could not be used to cut anything accurately. So I acquired this one, and this is a Powertec 71005 Deluxe table saw miter gauge. I got it on Amazon. It was highly rated. It had 4.3 stars out of 5. It said it had all kinds of accuracy features. I liked the fact that you could adjust the width of the bar in the slot. I liked the fact that it had stops. So it had a number of features that I really liked. But I then started cutting with this miter gauge and found that for cross cuts at 90-degree angles, it was adequate, and the stop was accurate. But when I moved to 45 degrees, I found that I had problems with it. And what were the problems? Well, I said this was wider, but it's not really wide enough. So I built an extension board. So you could lay a piece of wood on there and feel that it was moving against that. It was against here, and you felt comfortable with it. You could move your hand away from the blade further. And the other thing I put on here was there was no stop. So I built a little stop. This is an interesting little mechanism. It locks in place. It comes off very simple. There's a furniture screw in there, a couple of screws here. I made it just slightly wider than the width of this, and it locks in place. And once it's locked in place, it simply does not move. So it's very adequate for a stop. Comes off easy. All the other stops that I had didn't have that feature. That comes off that easy, that locks that quick. And okay, so 45 degrees. So with the extension, with a discovery that when I locked it, and you'll have to look at this feature here, because this now is exactly at 45, but it's not, this little tongue here is not exactly in that groove. In fact, it reads 45 and some change, but it's just not accurate. And how do I know that? Well, because what I did, and I'll turn the blade off so that I can measure this. Now, how do you tell if you're really cutting a 45? Well, you either experiment and keep experimenting, or you actually measure your saw. And if you put the blade up like that, and now you'll have to look from this angle over here. This is an accurate piece of equipment, and if I move this up to here, you can see that's exactly at 45. It's all the way around here. It's flat on this blade. It touches two of the kerf points. So two or more of the kerf points. So I know that's exactly accurate, and I've demonstrated it. You've seen cutting those joints, those pieces of wood. But if I relied simply on this stop mechanism, it wasn't good enough. So I discovered that. And that's what you do with any kind of woodworking. You're going to be trying things, and you're going to be realizing that you don't have the accuracy that you want, and then you make changes. Okay, so what we've talked about is to achieve better accuracy, setting a wide fence on the miter gauge. We've talked about achieving accuracy, better accuracy. I cut mainly 90 degrees and I cut 45. If I want to do something other than that, what I'm going to do is use this digital gauge to get an exact dimension. But I rarely do that. I mostly cut 90s and 45. So I want to make sure they're good. We've talked about adjusting this relative to the fence. And So we talked about putting a block on here. You can make your own. I can easily show you how to do that. I think you captured the basic details, but if anybody wants more on this, I can provide that. One nagging problem remained. What was that? That was how loose this miter bar was in this miter slot. And why would that be important? Well, imagine if it's loose, you're not going to cut accurately because the thing moves around. So what did the manufacturers do? Well, first of all, why are they giving me, let's go back to first principles. Why, when I ask for a miter bar like this, why doesn't it fit exactly in the slot? Why is there any play to start off with? Well, good question. I suspect that the manufacturers say not all these miter slots from various saw manufacturers have exactly the same width. They're not, this is a 3/4 inch wide by 3/8 of an inch deep miter slot. That's standard on all table saws. But the width is not exactly 3/4 of an inch. And so when the manufacturers make these miter bars, they undersize them so that they don't have rejects. That's my supposition. Why? Because if they give you a way to adjust it, isn't that good enough? Well, if the saw manufacturers make inaccurate slots, that has to be good enough because they want to sell miter gauges. All right, so what do? Well, a variety of solutions, but here's one. This is a little set screw. There are 3 of them. One's hidden underneath. 3 of them on this bar. And what you're supposed to do is let those, adjust those so this fits exactly right. But guess what? What do you think happens to that little set screw? When I move back and forth and I make many cuts, that little set screw is rubbing against the side of this. Guess what happens? It unscrews, it goes in, okay? So once I realized that, and I'm talking about not just one day doing this, I'm talking about several months of trying to figure out what is my best solution for this. So I put what's called LOCTITE. LOCTITE is a formulation, and I'll leave it in the notes below, that you can use to lock a screw in position. Well, guess what? Since the screw was so tiny, that didn't work. So I still had the slop in here. So I'm sitting around one day trying to figure this out, saying, I'm not done with this. I'm absolutely determined I'm going to figure this out. And laying next to me on the bench happened to be some of this tape. And all of a sudden it hit me. Wow, how thick is this tape? Could I possibly use it? Well, it's slick on the outside, which means it'll move in the miter slot very nicely, but it's duct tape, so it sticks very well. How thick is it? How much did I need? All these questions were jumping around in my brain. So I got my very accurate digital calipers, and I measured the thickness. And of course, this is double the thickness, but I measured that, and it's 16 thousandths or 15 thousandths of an inch. Well, half of that distance is 8, right? So guess what I did? I took a piece of that tape and I very carefully put it all along this edge. And did I know that that was going to be exactly right? Well, I had a choice of more than one piece of tape if it wasn't. So I put it in here, and that's after the set screws were already all the way in. And I tried to move it in the slot. Guess what? It maybe has 2 or 3 thousandths of an inch of movement. Look when I move this. That's way out at the end of this board. I can barely move that. I can move that maybe a 64th over the whole length of this. More than enough accuracies. Solution found. I love it. If you have a similar problem, use the same technique. Duct tape, shiny on the outside, sticky on the inside. Try it on your saw, try it with your slot, and you'll see that this works perfectly. I'm not saying it's a solution for every miter bar. They're all different. They're not consistently made. We've just discovered that. But if you have the problem that I did, here's a solution for you. And I've shown you how accurate it is. So enjoy, cut accurate miters. And if you have any questions at all, please contact me. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.